Methods of data collection. Case study. Case study method may be defined as small, inclusive and intensive study of an individual in which investigator brings to bear all his skills and methods, or as a systematic gathering of enough information about a person to permit one to understand how he or she functions as until of society. The case study is a form of qualitative how he or she functions as unit of society. The case study is a form of qualitative analysis involving a very careful and complete observation of a person, situation, or institution. Case study is a method of exploring and analyzing business aspects of an industrial unit, even entire industry. What is case study method? Case study research excels at bringing us to an understanding of a complex issue or object and can extend experience or add strength to what is already known through previous research. Case studies emphasize detailed contextual analysis of a limited number of events or conditions and their relationships. Researchers have used the case study research method for many years across a variety of disciplines. Social scientists, in particular, have made wide use of this qualitative research method to examine contemporary real-life situations and provide the basis for the application of ideas and extensive of methods. Researcher Robert K. Yin defines the case study research method as an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon within its real-life context, when the boundaries between phenomenon and context are not clearly evident and in which multiple sources of evidence are used. Critics of the case study method believe that the study of a small number of cases can offer no grounds for establishing reliability or generality of findings. Others feel that the intense exposure to study of the case biases the findings. Some dismiss case study research as useful only as an exploratory tool. Yet, researchers continue to use the case study research method with success in carefully planned and crafted studies of real-life situations, issues, and problems. Reports on case studies from many disciplines are widely available in the literature. This paper explains how to use the case study method and then applies the method to an example case study project designed to examine how one set of users, non-profit organizations, make use of an electronic community network. The study examines the issue of whether or not the electronic community network is beneficial in some way to non-profit organizations and what those benefits might be. Many well-known case study researchers such as Robert E. Stake, Helen Simons, and Robert K. Yin have written about case study research and suggested techniques for organizing and conducting the research successfully. Characteristics of a case study. Let us now look few characteristics. Study of a unit. The case study method studies a subject matter which forms a cohesive whole and may be treated as a unit. The unit can be an individual, a family, an institution. Intensive or in-depth study. Case study attempts a deep and detailed study of the unit. It is a method of study in depth rather than breadth. It places more emphasis on the full analysis of a limited number of events or conditions and their interrelations. Knowledge of behavior patterns. The case study method deals with both what and why of the subject. It tries to describe the complex behavioral pattern of a unit and, having done this, tries to discover the factors which will rationally account for them. In brief, case study method aims at description as well as explanation of the unit it studies. It also explains the place and role of a unit in its surrounding social milieu. the study of the whole unit. The case study method tries to perceive the unitary forces of the subject matter and organizes it into an integral whole. Assumptions of the case study method. Let us now learn some of the basic assumptions of the case study method. Totality of the being. In this method, the unity of the study, which may be an individual or a business group, is studied as a unit. This study is confined to a particular time or situation, but it is totality or in all its aspects. Underlying unit. It is believed that a unit is the representative of a type and it should be studied as a type rather than as an individual unit. This assumption involves that the units are the same and there is no difference in studying a particular unit. Complexity of the business environment. This study is based on the assumption that the business environment is a very complex affair and so deeper study is required. Therefore, the case data are gathered of an entire life cycle of an industrial product or unit. Influence of the time factor. Business environment gets influenced by the time factor as it is dynamic in nature. Accordingly, the study cannot be worthwhile unless it is long range and over considerable period of time so that institutions and groups in their various aspects may become well known. Similarity of response in human beings. The case study method believes that the fundamental responses from human beings will be more or less the same. Resources or circumstances. Besides believing in the fundamental of consistency of human nature, it also believes that the business conditions and circumstances tend to recur from time with marginal changes. Advantages of case study method. The case study method is a very popular method of collecting data about industrial units and industries as a whole. The main advantages of case study methods are as follows. Intensive and deep study of the problems is possible. The case study method enables one to understand fully the behavior pattern of the concerned unit. In this method, the problem is recognized as a unit and various aspects of the problem are subjected to deep and detailed study. Study of the subjective aspects. Through case study, a researcher can obtain a real and enlightened record of specific experiences, which would reveal a business unit's problems and motivation that derives the unit to adopt a certain pattern of behavior. Comparative study. In this method, all the aspects of life of an industrial unit are studied. Through this study, the characteristics of one particular industry or firm may be differential from the characteristics of other. Thus, the method is helpful in comparative study. Formulation of valid hypothesis. Once the various cases are extensively studied and analyzed, the researcher can deduce various generalizations which may be developed into useful hypotheses. Useful in framing in questionnaire and schedules. Case study is of great help in framing questionnaire, schedule and other forms. This in turn helps in getting prompt response. Sampling. Case study is helpful in stratification of the sample. By studying the individual units, the researcher can put them in definite classes or types and thereby facilitate the perfect stratification of the sample. Study of process. In cases where the problem under study constitutes a process and not one incident. Example, merger process, cartel formation, etc. The case study is the appropriate method. Use of several research methods. The researcher can use one or more of the several research methods under the case study method depending upon the prevalent circumstances. Limitations of the case study method. Unrealistic assumptions. Case study method is based on several assumptions which may not be very realistic at times, and as such the usefulness of case data is always subject to doubt. Problem of finance, time and energy. Through this method, it is not possible to cover the large area of a study. It requires large finance time and energy to complete the study. False generation, false generalization. Generalization is formulated on the basis of data collected. If the data collected are wrong, the generalization shall be wrong. Difficult to test reliability of the validity of the data collected. This study is based on the information that is given by an individual or a firm. If the information furnished is wrong, there is no method on the basis of which researcher can test the reliability of the information. Not possible to apply sampling method. In this method, individual is recognized as a unit and the entire study is concentrated on that unit. It is necessary that the unit may be representative of the universe. Through the study of a particular unit, it is not possible to apply the knowledge of other units. Defective records. If the records on the basis of which data are collected are defective and not based on objectivity, the generalization becomes defective. Lack of quantitative study. It is not possible to quantify the feelings, emotions, reactions, values, etc., and as such it lacks scientific temper. Procedure of case study. There are 6 steps for data collection using case study method. They are: determine and define the research questions, select the cases and determine data gathering and analysis techniques, prepare to collect the data, collect data in the field, evaluate and analyze the data, prepare the report. Determine and define the research questions. The first step in case study research is to establish a firm research focus to which the researcher can prefer over the course of study of a complex phenomenon or object. The researcher establishes the focus of the study by forming questions about the situation or problem to be studied and determining a purpose for the study. The research object in a case study is often a program, an entity, a person, or a group of people. Each object is likely to be indirectly connected to political, social, historical, and personal issues, providing wide-ranging possibilities for questions and adding complexity to the case study. The researcher investigates the object of the case study in depth using a variety of data gathering methods to produce evidence that leads to understanding of the case and answers the research questions. Case study research generally answers one or more questions which begin with how or why. The questions are targeted to a limited number of events or conditions and their interrelationships. To assist in targeting and formulating the questions, researchers conduct a literature review. This review establishes what research has been previously conducted and leads to redefined, insightful questions about the problem. Careful definition of the questions at the start pinpoints where to look for evidence and helps determine the methods of analysis to be used in the study. The literature review, definition of the purpose of the case study, and early determination of the potential audience for the final report guide how the study will be designed, conducted, and publicly reported. Step 2. Select the cases and determine data gathering and analysis techniques. During the design phase of case study research, the researcher determines what approaches to use in selecting single or multiple real-life cases to examine in depth and which instruments and data gathering approaches to use. When using multiple cases, each case is treated as a single case. Each case's conclusions can then be used as information contributing to the whole study, but each case remains a single case. Exemplary case studies carefully select cases and carefully examine the choices available from among many research tools available in order to increase the validity of the study. Careful discrimination at the point of selection also helps erect boundaries around the case. The researcher must determine whether to study cases which are unique in some way or cases which are considered typical and may also select cases to represent a variety of geographic regions, a variety of size parameters, or other parameters. A useful step in the selection process is to be repeatedly refer back to the purpose of the study in order to focus attention on where to look for cases and evidence that will satisfy the purpose of the study and answer the research questions posed. Selecting multiple or single cases is a key element, but a case study can include more than one unit of embedded analysis. For example, a case study may involve study of a single industry and a firm participating in that industry. This type of case study involves two levels of analysis and increases the complexity and amount of data to be gathered and analyzed. A key strength of the case study method involves using multiple sources and techniques in the data gathering process. The researcher determines in advance what evidence to gather and what analysis techniques to use with the data to answer the research questions. Data gathered is normally largely qualitative, but it may also be quantitative. Tools to collect data can include surveys, interviews, documentation review, observation, and even the collection of physical artifacts. The researcher must use the designated data gathering tools systematically and properly in collecting the evidence. Throughout the design phase, researchers must ensure that the study is well constructed to ensure construct validity, internal validity, external validity, and reliability. Construct validity requires the researcher to use the correct measures for the concepts being studied. Internal validity demonstrates that certain conditions lead to other conditions and requires the use of multiple pieces of evidence from multiple sources to uncover convergent lines of inquiry. The researcher strives to establish a chain of evidence forward and backward. External validity reflects whether or not findings are generalizable beyond the immediate cases or cases. The more variations in places, people, and procedures a case study can withstand and still yield the same findings, the more external validity. Techniques such as cross-case examination and within-case examination along with literature review helps ensure external validity. Reliability refers to the stability, accuracy, and precision of measurement. Exemplary case study design ensures that the procedures used are well documented and can be repeated with the same results over and over again. Step 3. Prepare to collect the data. Because case study research generates a large amount of data from multiple sources, systematic organization of the data is important to prevent the researcher from becoming overwhelmed by the amount of data and to prevent the researcher from losing sight of the original research purpose and questions. Advanced preparation assists in handling large amounts of data in a documented and systematic fashion. Researchers prepare databases to assist with categorizing, sorting, storing, and retrieving data for analysis. Exemplary case studies prepare good training programs for investigators. Establish clear protocols and procedures in advance of investigator fieldwork and conduct a pilot study in advance of moving into the field in order to remove obvious barriers and problems. The investigator training program covers the basic concepts of the study, terminology, processes, and methods, and teaches investigators how to properly apply the techniques being used in the study. The program also trains investigators to understand how the gathering of data using multiple techniques strengthens the study by providing opportunities for triangulation during the analysis phase of the study. The program covers protocols for case study research, including time deadlines, formats for narrative reporting and field notes, guidelines for collection of documents, and guidelines for field procedures to be used. Investigators need to be good listeners who can hear exactly the words being used by those interviewed. Qualifications for investigators also include being able to ask good questions and interpret answers. Good investigators review documents looking for facts, but also read between the lines and pursue collaborative evidence elsewhere when that seems appropriate. Investigators need to be flexible in real-life situations and not feel threatened by unexpected change, missed appointments, or lack of office space. Investigators need to understand the purpose of the study and grasp the issues and must be open to contrary findings. Investigators must also be aware that they are going into the world of real human beings who may be threatened or unsure of what the case study will bring. After investigators are trained, the final advanced preparation step is to select a pilot site and conduct a pilot test using each data gathering method so that problematic areas can be uncovered and corrected. Researchers need to anticipate key problems and events, identify key people, prepare letters of introduction, establish rules for confidentiality, and actively seek opportunities to revisit and revise the research design in order to address and add to the original set of research questions. Step 4. Collect data in the field. The researcher must collect and store multiple sources of evidence comprehensively and systematically in formats that can be referenced and sorted so that converging lines of inquiry and patterns can be uncovered. Researchers carefully observe the object of the case study and identify causal factors associated with the observed phenomenon. Renegotiation of arrangements with the objects of the study or addition of questions to interviews may be necessary as the study progresses. Case study research is flexible, but when changes are made, they are documented systematically. Exemplary case studies use field notes and databases to categorize and reference data so that it is readily available for subsequent reinterpretation. Field notes record feelings and initiative hunches, pose questions, and document the work in progress. They record testimonies, stories, and illustrations, which can be used in later reports. They may warn of impending bias because of the detailed exposure of the client to special attention or give an early signal that a pattern is emerging. They assist in determining whether or not the inquiry needs to be reformulated or redefined based on what is being observed. Field notes should be kept separate from the data being collected and stored for analysis. Maintaining the relationship between the issue and the evidence is mandatory. The researcher may enter some data into a database and physically store other data, but the researcher documents, classifies, and cross-references all evidence so that it can be efficiently recalled for sorting and examination over the course of the study. Evaluate and analyze the data. The researcher examines raw data using many interpretations in order to find linkages between the research object and the outcomes with reference to the original research questions. Throughout the evaluation and analysis process, the researcher remains open to new opportunities and insights. The case study method, with its use of multiple data collection methods and analysis techniques, provides researchers with opportunities to triangulate data in order to strengthen the research findings and conclusions. The tactics used in analysis force researchers to move beyond initial impressions to improve the likelihood of the accurate and reliable findings. Exemplary case studies will deliberately sort the data in many different ways to expose or create new insights and will deliberately look for conflicting data to disconfirm the analysis. Researchers categorize, tabulate, and recombine data to address the initial propositions or purpose of the study and conduct cross-checks of facts and discrepancies in accounts. Focused, short, repeat interviews may be necessary to gather additional data to verify key observations or check a fact. Specific techniques include placing information into arrays, creating matrices of categories, creating flowcharts or other displays, and tabulating frequency of events. Researchers use the quantitative data that has been collected to corroborate and support the qualitative data, which is most useful for understanding the rationale or theory underlying relationships. Another technique is to use multiple investigators to gain the advantage provided when a variety of perspectives and insights examine the data and the patterns. When the multiple observations converge, confidence in the findings increases. Conflicting perceptions, on the other hand, cause the researchers to pry more deeply. Another technique, the cross-case search for patterns, keeps investigators from reaching premature conclusions by requiring that investigators look at the data in many different ways. Cross-case analysis divides the data by type across all cases investigated. One researcher then examines the data of that type thoroughly. When a pattern from one data type is corroborated by the evidence from another, the finding is stronger. When evidence conflicts, deeper probing of the differences is necessary to identify the cause or source of conflict. In all cases, the researcher treats the evidence fairly to produce analytic conclusions, answering the original how and why research questions. Step 6. Prepare the report. Exemplary case studies report the data in a way that transforms a complex issue into one that can be understood, allowing the reader to question and examine the study and reach an understanding independent of the researcher. The goal of the written report is to portray a complex problem in a way that conveys a vicarious experience to the reader. Case studies present data in very publicly accessible ways and may lead the reader to apply the experience in his or her own real-life situation. Researchers pay particular attention to displaying sufficient evidence to gain the reader's confidence that all avenues have been explored, clearly communicating the boundaries of the case and giving special attention to conflicting propositions. Techniques for composing the report can include handling each case as a separate chapter or treating the case as a chronological recounting. Some researchers report the case study as a story. During the report preparation process, researchers critically examine the document, looking for ways the report is incomplete. The researcher uses representative audience groups to review and comment on the draft document. Based on the comments, the researcher rewrites and makes revisions. Some case study researchers suggest that the document review audience include a journalist. Some suggest that the documents should be reviewed by the participants in the study. Case studies are complex because they generally involve multiple sources of data, may include multiple cases within a study, and produce large amounts of data for analysis. Researchers from many disciplines use the case study method to build upon theory, to produce new theory, to dispute or challenge theory, to explain a situation, to provide a basis to apply solutions to situations, to explore or to describe an object or phenomenon. The advantages of the case study method are its applicability to real life, contemporary, human situations and its public accessibility through written reports. Case study results relate directly to the common reader's everyday experience and facilitate an understanding of complex real-life situations.